let's continue with Lídia, Vinczéné, Fekete, and Judit Sass. They are going to be talking about how to make instructional videos more student-friendly. Lídia is a teaching methodology advisor at Corvinus University of Budapest. She's pursuing doctoral degree in the field of communication science. Her research interests include teacher communication, student engagement, automated facial recognition analysis during learning, online learning, and teaching methodology. Judith is an associate professor and head of the Institute of Psychology and Mental Health and the Department of Psychology at the University of Pannon. She received her PhD in psychology from the University of Vincze in 2005. Her research focuses on organizational justice, trust, and emotions, with a particular emphasis on e-learning and cognitive styles. Lídia and Judith, please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you see my screen well and hear me well?
Yes,
thank you.
We can.
So we are bringing you some practical research results related to boredom from the context of higher education. And this research has been conducted during the past 3 or 4 years in the frame of my doctoral studies. And on this journey, my mentor was Judit Sass, who was much more than a mentor, but she was a fantastic model and motivator for me, or model for an engaging professor and teacher and friend. And the results and the theoretical research behind the study belongs to her efforts as well. That's why she's here as well. And whenever you feel you did that you would like to add something, just interrupt me. So many years ago, so I graduated as a teacher, and I've been teaching for some years in a high school, and I was always interested in the facts behind the factors behind the fact that certain teacher behaviors make students like this, while others make them feel and act like this. And I was always interested in the factors behind these changes, or behind these two tool sets. Later on, I became an educational methodology advisor at Corvinus University of Budapest, and now I have started to systematically study student engagement in higher education to help our instructors to be more efficient. But I still was focusing on engagement. And that's how I arrived to Richard Pacron's control value theory, and to the which revealed for me that student emotions are extremely much more important than we have thought earlier, not only because they profoundly impact student engagement, but also because there's a reciprocal causation between engagement and emotions, achievement and appraisals, and again the emotions. And emotions can be various according to these circumstances that teachers and students create together. And I was also reading not only Pacron's but other studies related to achievement emotions, and this table summarizes the results of these studies that collected and investigated several emotions related to learning. And it turned out for me as well that as the findings of the last 20-30 years based on the control value theory show that strong correlations can be found with engaged and effective learning, and this list of emotions that are if you are observing and reading them, they are high valence, so very positive and activating most emotions, and the activating positive emotions proved to be the most effective in fostering student engagement. And another type of emotions, however, had a negative effect on the use of cognitive resources and engagement. And this effect is the strongest in the case of deactivated negative emotions, deactivating negative emotions. And just a small question, what do you think, which of these negative emotions has been studied the most in the last 3-5 years? In the context of education, what is your idea about it? Maybe I'm going forward. So it's not by accident that I arrived to the topic of boredom, which seems to be highly relevant and increasingly relevant in the context of education in the last some years. And I think that within this for this audience, I don't have to explain too much about the importance and the intensity of boredom-related research. Only these numbers and references can just show the increase of the intensity of these studies in the last 30 years. And since the pandemic, this process has been accelerated, as the Boredom Handbook also summarized and called our attention to these facts and these calculations. And especially in the case of academic boredom, the rate of articles focusing on academic boredom or learning-related boredom has been intensively increased, and this can also show that boredom might be a more and more problematic barrier for students during learning. And the next question, if we know that engagement can be achieved by changing student emotions, the next question is who can change these emotions and how can we tackle them, especially boredom. If we say that in the context of learning, boredom is not so beneficial in the long term, only temporarily can be beneficial. And we saw that one of the most important the solutions are related to appraisals and also to environment. And the good news is that both students and teachers can change both the environment and appraisals. That means that the context, the strategies used for learning, and also the methods we are using for learning, and coping strategies set for students are increasingly developed and built in the curricula of several subjects within higher education, and this is highly important and interesting. But my research focused on instructional communication, or the intervention strategies conducted, or the opportunities given for teachers on how to change the environment and the appraisal of students' learning environment. And the behaviors, interventions, and tools that applied by teachers can be distinguished according to the type of engagement we would like to support. The last presentation told that according to some views, the opposite of boredom is entertainment. In my research, in the context of this research, it turned out that it would be too simple to state that engagement is the opposite of boredom. But in this context, I could say that engagement is a remedy for boredom, and it is a goal which is opposite of boredom, though engagement is a very broad and not too tangible concept. However, these two types of teacher interventions can support students' understanding and students' feelings, emotions, mood, and the atmosphere they learn in. And the good news is related to boredom. One of the conclusions that we could learn also from the boredom handbook, that in the case of boredom, it's much more useful to instead of focusing boredom, it's much more useful to increase the positive emotions during learning rather than focusing and dealing with boredom. It's important to know when do the students are they bored, but it's much more important to increase their enthusiasm and flow and positive emotions. And this is not a newly discovered idea, because there are several expressions used earlier to distinguish these two types of approaches, these two types of tool sets used by the teachers. And there were some like reason and spirit, logos and pathos, clarity of instruction according to Comenius, or nurturing learning environment. Or I like the hold and the catch, meaning these two expressions that first sometimes we have to catch students' attention with some emotional or funny or interesting stimulus, but in the long run, we can hold their interest by presenting the content in a very clear, very transparent and easy to understand way. And during the pandemic, the community of inquiry model became more widespreadly known. The cognitive and social presence were distinguished in the context of online learning, when it turned out that students need not only a cognitive and teaching presence from the part of the teacher, but they need even more their social presence. So ways to connect personally, to relate to the teacher, which can be effectively help them to cope with the boredom. And finally, I would mention here the control and the value mentioned in Pekron's theory, because when we feel that we have control over something to learn, it is related with our understanding, and value is a concept which is related a little bit more with emotions, because students need to feel valued or feel that the process of learning is giving them some value, even if that value is not a practical one, but an emotional experience, or even if they just feel the meaningfulness of the content. So this is some about our readings related to the topic. But what are the real questions after this introduction that we wanted to answer? What we were interested in was how do the different types of instructional tools influence the students' emotions. So what kind of concrete tools can teachers use to increase interest, emotional interest, and cognitive interest? How can we measure this impact? And finally, the most challenging part of education, since the pandemic, we can see that that we no longer conduct distance education for all students, but many online learning elements and instructional videos stayed with us, and the proportion of online learning has been increased since the pandemic, because it has some beneficial effects, or it is easier and more flexible, and to pursue studies in this form of learning. And so the question was what kind of tools can the teachers use to make to reduce boredom in the context of instructional videos, because These videos are challenging to prepare both for the teachers and very, very boring for the students. And the majority of the students, even if it is compulsory, they cannot watch these videos without suffering, or they cannot engage in learning based on instructional videos, because it is so far from the natural way of communication. So boredom is a special problem in the case of online learning. And for the tools used in instructional videos, I apply the multimedia learning principles collected by Meyer and Fiorella in the past 20-30 years, and later on studies by Fifield and others. And one of the questions I was trying to find answer to, how do multimedia principles, that are some of them, these are only some of these principles, can affect emotions, arousal, and valence. And as for the emotions, I was interested in boredom as a highlighted topic. There are some challenges when we want to measure boredom, and as we all know it, as for the subjective methods, in many cases, people are not fully aware of the point when they start to get bored, and it's not easy to detect the triggers of boredom. As for the objective methods, sometimes they are too obtrusive and too artificial. And as for there are some computer vision-based methods as well, such as eye tracking or facial analysis, but the analysis and the interpretation of these data, this huge amount of numerical data, is very challenging and requires very thorough statistical and methodological competencies. However, most studies recommend us to triangulate results gained through these methods and use multimodal measures to measure boredom. What I did is I invited students one by one to a classroom in our university at Corvinus University of Budapest, who first filled in a self-report questionnaire. Then they watched a 22-minute long video presentation, and finally I conducted a very short interview with them, detected the most boring and the most interesting tools used by the instructor. The analysis included quantitative and qualitative elements as well. So several types of statistical analysis were conducted to analyze numerical data with the involvement and professional guidance of statistical experts as well. And also constant comparative analysis was used for the interview analysis. And as for the results, some words. The multimedia principles of learning used in this video, I detected, or I found in this video 11 principles. And then based on the instructional video, I coded the video by marking each second according to whether a specific principle was present or not. In that, I enlarged now the screen a little bit so that it can be seen. One of the principles, for example, is example or personalization, meaning that the teacher is using a humor or a personal expression, or humor, multimedia, or teacher's face is also a very powerful tool that they can use to decrease student attention. And here are the emotional states and variables that were detected by the face reader, the Nordus face reader software. And this table is shown only to give you some insight into the background calculation of the data. And if you are interested, at the end, I can share more information about it. But I conducted per sample t-test, where I didn't compare the absolute values of the values of change of the facial expression, but I compared the changes of each of the participants' facial expressions in terms of each of the multimedia principles. And here are, for example, some results related to boredom that in the case of during the periods when there was no teacher face on the screen, boredom was higher and significantly lower when the teacher face appeared. And in the case of visual elements, it was much lower than in the case of no visual. So these data or results are significant and also are checked for by Horn-Bonferroni correction. This is a heat map which summarizes the effect size and the strength of the relationship between the individual multimedia principles and the emotional states. Because when I was calculating, I discovered that half of these principles used by the given teacher was related to these are tools that are used to usually increase emotional interest, and another part of the tools are used to help understanding. And if we just compare them and observe them individually, we can call these immediacy tools, for example, storytelling, embodiment, humor, or smile. As you can see, they increase the level of valence and decrease the negative emotions. And what is interesting that tools that are increasing the helping understanding and that are students always mentioning that they like these tools. So usually they told in the interviews that, for example, signaling is very, very helpful for them. This is what I'm doing now. This is, or signaling. This is the signaling when you are highlighting something on the slide while you are speaking to the students. That was very effective. However, it increased the level of negative emotions. That means that this tool, face reader, is very imperfect, and it means for me, if we are just checking the boredom row, this is the boredom here, you can see that as for boredom and neutral, which is very similar to boredom, each of the tools, multimedia tools, decreased the level of boredom, which is a good news, showing that if you are using embodiment, personalization, multimedia, or segmenting or examples, you will decrease your students' boredom. Here you can maybe see a little bit better or for more closer, and I have some 5 conclusions. What I have already told, that each of the principles, multimedia tools, reduce boredom. The second, multi-effective measures for reducing boredom were as follows. Multimedia coherence segmenting, that means that shorter slides, which are shorter than 1 minute, are more are better to prevent boredom. And embodiment, teacher's face appearing in the screen, even if we don't feel ourselves so nice, it's very helpful for students, and personalization. The third conclusion is that in facial analysis data, boredom and neutral are behaving in a similar way. So maybe in the case of boredom, in the case of facial analysis, we can use and rely or detect or pay attention to neutral, because it can also give information about student boredom. When nothing is happening on your face, it may mean that you are boring. So the fourth one, don't be afraid of evoking negative emotions. I can tell you based on the interviews that students are extremely grateful when we trigger any type of emotions, even if they hate us. Everything is better in the context of learning than being bored. And finally, measures aiming to increase emotional interest. So positive and enjoy and warm and immediacy behaviors increase students' emotional interest in engagement the most powerfully. So even if we are triggering negative emotions and we are not afraid of them, it is very, very, very important that we increase these positive emotions in several ways as we can. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Lídia. There are a lot of very interesting ideas, particularly for those of us who are teachers. Does anyone have any question, comment for Lídia? Yes, Well,
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Lydia, for your study. It's great, and as a teacher, I really appreciate it. um, the first question is really simple: is where have you published this study or this article, or is not published yet?
Not yet. It will be my doctoral dissertation, which I'm working on it currently.
Okay.
But this type of statistical analysis was not yet published, but it will be. Other types of analysis were already included in my articles.
Okay. And second one is I have doubts, but because I think I didn't get it well. How did you exactly decide how to measure face expressions, and how do you make the difference between boredom as an emotion between other type of emotions? That's the other question. Thank you.
Thank you. Should I answer it now or later? I use Nodus Face Reader software, and this software is based on several research, qualitative and quantitative research, and coded, using coded pictures and also professional artists who acted showing certain emotions, and then this was also tested for validating the results. But this is a built-in function in this software in face readers. So based on a very large number of photos and also on the movement of facial expressions. Facial actions and facial muscles, it estimates the possible emotions behind a behavior. So this is not something exact. It can be useful for changes or of subconscious emotional changes or emotions. But it's reliable in the case of some emotions. In the case of boredom, it's less reliable because this is a new function of the software.
Okay, thank you, Lydia.
Thank you, Lídia. Again, very provocative in many ways, and also in the relationship between boredom and technology, which in itself is a different field.